daughters left home, went on their own, and prospered. Years later, they get back together to discuss the gifts they were able to give to their elderly mother on her 90th birthday. The first said, "I built a big house for our mother." The second one said, "I sent her a Mercedes with a driver." The third smiled and said, "I've got you both beat. You know how mom enjoys the Bible and you know she can't see very well. It took over 10 years to train him and I pledged over $1 million to these monks that trained him. But it was worth it. Mom just has to name the chapter and the parrot will recite it." Soon after, the elderly mom sends out letters of thanks. To her first daughter, "The house you built is so huge. I only live in one room and I have to clean the whole house." To the second daughter, "I'm too old to travel. I stay home all the time, so I never use the Mercedes, and the driver is so rude." To the third, she said, "Dearest daughter, you were the only daughter that had good sense to know what your mother likes. That chicken was delicious." After being in prison for 15 years, a man escapes. He breaks into a house to look for money but finds a young couple in bed. He ties the man to a chair and then he tied the girl in the bed and started kissing her neck. Then he gets up and goes to the bathroom. The man says to his wife, "Listen, this guy is a dangerous escaped convict. He probably hasn't seen a woman in years. And I saw how he kissed your neck. So if he wants to have sex with you, don't resist, don't complain. Do whatever he tells you or he might kill us. Be strong for us, honey. I love you." The wife looks at her husband and responded, "He wasn't kissing my neck. He was whispering in my ear and he told me he was gay and thought you were cute and asked if we had any Vaseline. I told him it was in the bathroom. So be strong, honey. I love you too." My husband is super cheap and he never let me spend his money. But one day he got sick and as he was laying in his deathbed, he said to me, "Now listen, I want you to put all the money in my casket when I die because I want to take my money to the afterlife." He made me promise with all my heart, so I said I promise. On the day of the funeral, I brought a shoebox and placed it in the casket and said goodbye as they rolled him away. My best friend sat down next to me and said, "I hope you're not crazy enough to give all your money to that stingy husband of yours." I replied, "I promised him. I'm a Christian, so I have to keep my word." "You mean you just put every cent of your money in that casket with him?" I said, "Of course. I put all the money together, deposited into my account, and then wrote him a check." A woman gave birth to twin boys, but gave them up for adoption. One of the boys was adopted by a family and friends, and his name was Francois. The other boy was adopted to Spain, and his name was Mateo. Many years later, Francois sent a photo of himself to his birth mother. She cried tears of joy and said to her husband, "Oh, how I wish I had a picture of Mateo as well." He responded, "Honey, they're twins. If you've seen a picture of Francois, you've seen a picture of Mateo." An old boss calls up his young secretary and says, "Get ready for the weekend. We are going on a business trip." The secretary then calls her husband and says, "Me and my boss are going on a business trip for 2 days, so take care of yourself." The husband then calls his girlfriend and says, "Hey, my wife is going on a business trip, so come over and we can have some fun." The girlfriend then calls up the little girl who she's a tutor to and says, "Sorry, no tutoring this weekend." The little girl then calls her grandpa and says, "Grandpa, I don't have tutoring this weekend. We can spend the weekend together." The grandpa then calls his young secretary and says, "Sorry, the business trip is canceled. I'm going to spend the weekend with my granddaughter." The secretary then calls her husband and says, "I won't be going anymore." The husband then calls his girlfriend and said, "Sorry, my wife is not going anymore." The girlfriend then calls the little girl, "Tutoring is back on." The little girl then calls her grandpa and says, "Sorry, grandpa, I've actually got classes this weekend." In my 20s, I went to the therapist and complained that I didn't want to get married. I said I'm educated, independent, and self-sufficient. I don't need a husband, but my parents are pressuring me. What do I do? She replied, "I have no doubt you're going to achieve great things in life. But sometimes things will go wrong, and sometimes you'll fail, and sometimes your plans won't work out, and sometimes your wishes won't be fulfilled. Then who will you blame? Will you blame yourself?" "No." "Exactly. That's why you need a husband." My boyfriend of 10 years calls me one day and he says that he needs to go to Palm Springs with his boss to golf for a week. He said it was a good opportunity for him to get a promotion. He asked me to pack him a week's worth of clothes and set out his golf clubs. He said, "We'll be leaving from the office and we'll swing by the house to pick up my things, and please pack my new blue silk pajamas." I felt like there was something fishy about his story, but I just did as he asked. When he came back next week, I asked how his trip was. He said, "Oh man, I did so good. I hit an 82 and I almost got a hole in one. But why didn't you pack my blue silk pajamas?" And I said, "I did. They're in your golf bag." After finding out my boyfriend of 10 years was cheating on me, I went to the pharmacy and asked the pharmacist, "Do you guys have any cyanide?" The pharmacist was shocked and asked, "What do you need cyanide for?" I said quietly, "I'm planning to poison my boyfriend." The pharmacist angrily replied, "I'm sorry, but there's no way I can give you cyanide for that." I then reached into my purse and took out a hidden camera photo of my boyfriend sleeping with the pharmacist's wife. He looked up at me and said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you had a prescription." We've had our housekeeper for about 2 years now. She's generally really good, but today she really made me mad. She came into my office and asked for a raise. I asked her, "Why do you think you deserve a pay increase?" She said there are 3 reasons. The first is that I iron better than you. Who said that? Your husband. Okay. The second reason is that I'm a better cook than you. And who said that? Your husband? Oh. The third reason is that I'm better at sex than you. Did my husband say that as well? No, but your gardener did. I quickly picked up my checkbook. So how much do you want? A very famous autopsy professor was giving a lecture to a group of students. Standing over a corpse, she said to the class, "To make it in medical forensics, you must have no fear." She then proceeded to stick a finger in the anus and lick it. The students in the class were disgusted and shocked, but did as they were told. Then the professor said, "Second, you must have an acute sense of observation. For instance, how many of you guys noticed that I used my middle finger to go up the anus, but licked my index finger?" After an amazing first day, he asked me if I wanted to spend the night, and I said, "Okay, sure." Before he went to sleep, he said, "Oh, by the way, my toilet's not working, so only pee inside." And I said, "Okay, cool, good night." But in the middle of the night, I woke up with a terrible stomach ache. I scrambled to his bathroom, but remembered that his toilet was broken. But my stomach was hurting so bad I needed to go number 2. So I walked around his place looking for a place where I could take a shit. I needed to go so badly, but couldn't find a place. Then all of a sudden, I saw a picture of the dog and realized he had a dog, so that means I could poo on the floor and then blame it on the dog. It was so embarrassing. I really didn't want to, but I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it anyway. My stomach felt so much better afterwards, so I climbed back into bed and went to sleep. The next day, he woke up and found the poop on the ground, and he said, "What the fuck?" I rushed out and I said, "Hey, look at that, your dog pooped on the ground." He's like, "I don't have a dog." And I said, "Who is that dog on your shelf then?" And he replied, "You mean Buddy? He died a year ago." I was out with my 5-year-old son, and he picked up something off the ground and began to put it in his mouth. I grabbed the item and took it away from him and said, "Do not do that." "Why, Mommy?" "Because it's the ground, it's dirty, and it probably has a ton of germs on it." He looked at me and said, "You're so smart, Mommy. How do you know all this stuff?" Well, all mommies know this stuff. It's called the mommy test. You have to know it or they don't let you be a mommy. He didn't say anything back, but he was in deep thought. After 2 or 3 minutes, he said, "Oh, I get it. So if you don't pass the test, then you have to be the daddy." Exactly. I called home from work one day, but my daughter picked up. I said, "Honey, is Daddy there?" She said, "No, Daddy's upstairs with Auntie Susie." I paused for a bit and then I realized, "Honey, you don't have an Auntie Susie." And she said, "Yes, I do. She's upstairs with Daddy right now." I said, "Okay, I want you to go upstairs, knock on the bedroom door, and shout to Daddy that Mommy's car is pulling into the driveway." I waited a few minutes and she came back. She said, "I did it, Mommy." And I asked her what happened. She said, "Daddy got all scared and jumped around with no clothes on, and then he ran around screaming, and then he tripped over a rug and he hit his head on the dresser. Now he isn't moving at all." And I said, "Oh my God, what about your Auntie Susie?" She said, "She jumped out of the bed with no clothes on and jumped out the back window into the swimming pool, but she forgot that you took the water out last week to clean it, and then she hit her head at the bottom of the pool, and now I think she's dead." I paused for a while. What swimming pool? Is this 2316677? One day when I was 8 years old, I had a really good idea. I went to my 3-year-old sister and said, "I think it's time that we started swearing." Not knowing any better, she nodded. I said, "When we go downstairs for breakfast, I'm going to swear first and then you go after me, okay?" She said, "Okay." When I got downstairs, my mom asked me what I wanted for breakfast. And I replied, "Shit, Mom, I don't know, maybe some pancakes?" My mom was pissed. She took off her slippers and whacked me in the head with it. Hurt and scared, I ran upstairs and cried. My mom then turned to my sister and asked, "What do you want?" She then replied, "I don't know, Mom, but it won't be fucking pancakes." Hey, Mama. Hi, honey. How was the honeymoon? It was good. It was so romantic and so special. Oh, that sounds so good. But when we got back from the honeymoon, he's changed. He started using these awful 4-letter words that I've never even heard of. Mom, can you please come pick me up? Well, we
what did he say? What were the 4-letter words?
He started using words like dust and cook and iron